Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today.
At Intel, world-changing ideas start with real solutions, and real solutions start with exceptional engineering. The quantum computing revolution, the next generation of AI experts, the renewable energy grid, early diagnosis for cancer. The examples are countless, the impacts are endless, but the foundation is always the same. It starts with Intel. Learn more at intel.com/stories.
Welcome to the AI Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Today on the podcast, joining us, we have Jonathan Raymond, who is the founder and CEO of Refound, which is a pioneering leadership coaching and advisory firm that seamlessly integrates AI technology to foster personal development within the fast-growing businesses. He has a really rich history of guiding leaders from controlling managers to empowering people leaders, and Jonathan is reshaping how AI is utilized in shaping the future of effective leadership. Welcome to the show today, Jonathan.
Hey, Jaden. Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Super excited to have you on. We got the opportunity to chat the other day, and I heard a little bit about what you're building, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get you on and telling my listeners about what you're doing. I'm wondering, would you be able to share with everyone a little bit about your journey and kind of what led you to start merging, leadership coaching with AI technology, all that kind of stuff at Refound and what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. So I got into this world sort of by accident about 10 years ago. I was a entrepreneur, I'd been involved in a bunch of different industries. And at the same time, I was really passionate about personal growth and personal development. And I got really interested in this space more broadly of like leadership and management and like, what do we do? And what are we actually doing when it comes to leading and managing in this hectic environment? And it's we've had a really nice run, and then things got really interesting in the pandemic, and it just sort of never ends, right? The level of complexity, the level of chaos, the things that we're dealing with right now: 2 wars, post-pandemic, hybrid work, inflation, divisive politics. I mean, you name it. Like the list is long. It seems to get longer every day. And we've sat next to a lot of high growth organizations through going through changes. And, the good news is I think we've been helpful, right? It's a good feeling. But the bad news is we've only been able to help in a partial way because we've been limited. And I would say our industry has been limited up to this point with our ability to help at scale, because a lot of the things that you need have historically required a lot of human intervention. There's so much nuance, there's so much context, there's so many sort of nooks and crannies in an organization where things go wrong, that if you want to help and you want to create a more humane place to work, you got to be everywhere. And that's impossible. Yeah. Or at least it's been impossible. And that's what I'm so excited about. I've been looking for something like generative AI for a really long time. I didn't know what I was looking for. But then when I found it earlier this year, I thought, oh, that's it. This is how we're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating because, yeah, right. You've had kind of this background in this kind of leadership coaching space and working on this. And then all of a sudden, I think a lot of people woke up at the beginning of this year and kind of had this aha moment where they're like, oh my gosh, this technology is so powerful. I can use it in my company or organization for X, Y, and Z. So tell us a little bit about, what you're currently using AI for, and some of the benefits that you think can be found in the kind of the people leadership space.
Yeah. So to me, so far, I know we're so early, right, in the AI world and everything is changing sort of by the day. But the primary use cases that we're focused on are really at the level of what we would call conversations and agreements. Mm-hmm. So we have a methodology that we've become famous for called the accountability dial. It's something people know about us. And it's a methodology for how to start, manage, guide, and close what you could consider to be coaching conversations, right? How do you help somebody grow, whether that person is your direct report or they're a peer? or there's somebody more senior. And historically, we've trained that through executive coaching, manager training, workshops, keynotes, et cetera. And what we're doing now is through AI, essentially allowing our users, and this is all in kind of early access with our existing clients, not publicly available yet, is we're giving users the ability to interact with our AI, who we call Ren. Mm-hmm. And Ren asks questions, and we've trained it right in our methodology, and we've done all of the fine tuning and all those kinds of things, so that Ren is giving philosophically accurate, contextually aware, personalized responses to that manager in the situation that they're in, right? So it's 10:32 on a busy Thursday morning, and they see a misalignment on their team, and they don't really know what to say. They got a million things in their inbox. They got 6 meetings to go to. Their calendar's triple booked. And, the easiest thing in the world to do in that moment is nothing.
Yeah.
And so by interacting with AI really simply, a couple of quick clarifying questions where we've programmed the AI to give them a script for, okay, go talk to this person and say this. And then, of course, like you could do with any, good, AI, you can modify it. You could say, oh, I really like how that sounds, but it's a little bit formal for the way that I normally speak. Can you make it a little bit less formal, right? Mm-hmm. You can adjust it. But we've reduced the time to execution dramatically into something that, maybe it would take you an hour with a coach. And, maybe you don't have that coach for 2 weeks, for, whatever it is. If you're lucky enough to have a coach, most people aren't. And we've reduced the time between the arising of the awareness of, oh, there's a problem, I got to do something, to the next sentence that you need to say to some person to move that conversation forward. So that's one of the two primary use cases. And then we have another framework, which we call Soul the Role, which is essentially helping people understand why their role exists, not what they're supposed to do today, what are the tasks and the goals and what have you, but why. It's more of emotional, inspirational, aspirational. And so we're using AI in that context to help managers articulate why a role exists in an organization, how it contributes to a team, what are the contexts that the person who's in that role today needs to know about, the tensions that it needs to balance, the voice that it needs to have. So it's everything that goes around a role that nobody ever talks about. And so we've essentially taken what we would normally do in a coaching context that would require a lot of person hours to execute, and we're using AI to do that within minutes.
Super, super cool. I love the features. I love everything you're doing. I see a ton of value. One thing I would like to ask you about, though, is, obviously, I think there's some very powerful use cases for integrating AI into everything you're building, a lot of value that can come out of those. I'm wondering, like, in your view, what are some of the biggest challenges today that leaders face when integrating AI into their management practices? Like, what's the hardest part about using these tools for them?
Well, I think it's a few. I mean, I think most organizations, people have like 473 logins, right? They have too many logins, and there's like too much signal fatigue, right? So everything's always flashing red or at least yellow. And so it's really hard to know, like, what do I do? Like, I could do 1,000 things, right? And in most organizations, if they have any kind of track record, they've already taught you a bunch of ideas, philosophies, methodologies. You have so much in your brain. It's like compacted in there. Like, so you've got all of these, you got all these tools, you have all these methodologies, you've got all these kind of, the organization has its values and vision and, all of its KPIs, OKRs, whatever. It's just overload, right? And so to me, I think the biggest obstacle is overload. It's not a lack of good intent. I meet, thousands of managers every year, hundreds and hundreds of executives, and it's very rare where you meet someone who has bad intent or who is like, legitimately doesn't care about other people. Like, most people do. They want to do the right thing, but it's overwhelming, right? And the priorities are constantly shifting. And frankly, everybody's toast right now. In the state of the world, it's like it impacts all of our mental and emotional and physical well-being. And so I think the obstacle is really like we're like stuck at this buffet of just too much content, too many information, too much tools, and we're missing these really small moments that are actually quite easy, but we don't have our brains in the right space to enact the right behaviors in those moments.
Yeah, I think that's so true, and I think that Definitely a big challenge that people have. Not that it's, impossible to overcome, but it's definitely there. Something else I would like to ask you about is, I'm wondering, based off of everything you're seeing and kind of your vantage point currently in the industry, I'm wondering if you can make any predictions about trends that you feel like you'll see AI, maybe like how AI is going to transform leadership coaching over the next decade. What are some ways, if you're looking to the future, that you think this is going to get integrated? And, I know today is the very early stages, but like if we're looking to the future and thinking of all the ways that this is really going to be able to help people, what do you think some of those big transformations will be?
Yeah, I think it's obviously I'm extremely bullish on the potential of what it can do, and we're probably at I don't know if we're at max hype, but we're certainly close, and we'll go
We're
through
getting there.
we'll go through the trial of disillusionment, right? Or however whatever that's called. But in terms of the I think that you're already seeing a lot of what I would call generic attempts to use AI in the domain of leadership, like whether that's monitoring meetings and giving you recommendations, or like generic insight at the level of whether it's through Teams applications or Slack or other things. And I think most of the bigger tech companies, they're gonna do those things, right? Because it's in their purview to do.
Yeah.
To me, I think the trend or the opportunity is for the specialization, for expertise to have its moment, right? To really get slices of that right to a level of depth. Because there are no I wouldn't say there are no new ideas in the realm of leadership and management, but what is often the case is that the ideas that people are presented with are very generic. And I think that the bringing that context down to the individual user, where AI knows about you in a positive way, in a way that you've given it permission, right? And it's safe and it's secure, where you get to delegate a lot of what we could call the executive function, right? It's like, if I'm a CEO of a business, and let's say I have an EA and I've got a chief of staff and I've got people around me, and I have so much capability that exists around me to filter information and to help me make good decisions through my day. Now, whether I make good decisions or not is ultimately up to me. But I can increase the odds through manual effort by surrounding myself with smart people who make good decisions, who filter information, and who help me intervene in the right ways. I think that is going to be available to everyone, right? Where anyone is going to be able to have enough information, enough context, enough signal diagnosis, let's say, to be more efficient about the choices we make and the conversations we have and how we go about it. What I think is super interesting is, a lot of, of course, a lot of the fear is like, oh, well, AI is going to replace coaching, or, that's like a lot of coaches are afraid that AI is going to replace coaching. I don't think it is at all. I think it's going to exponentialize coaching in the sense that most coaching sessions, if you could like be a fly on the wall of most coaching sessions, they're horribly inefficient, right? It's mostly a waste of time. And because mostly what happens is you have somebody who's totally overwhelmed, a leader or executive's totally overwhelmed. They got a million things going to plate. They don't really want to go to the coaching session, but they know it's like theoretically good for them, right? They show up. The coach spends most of the time trying to like step them back from like the chaos and the overwhelm to get to a place where they might be able to self-reflect and consider a new idea. And to me, what I think the trend will be, well, actually, by the time I get to that coaching session, I've done so much. I've accomplished so many things that I don't actually need that. I don't need the coach to be my babysitter anymore. Now we can have a real conversation. We could go deep. Yeah. Because I'm actually implementing and practicing, because I've got AI next to me. I've got essentially the coach's representative with me watching me play, right? And that's like, because that's the problem with coaching is, if you look at like a professional tennis player, an athlete, like they don't sit in a side room with you. They watch you play. Yeah. Right. But in the domain of leadership coaching, like we don't watch people play. And we do this at Refound now manually. It's really like we'll sit with leaders in rooms and we'll attend meetings and we'll kind of like listen to them and understand. But that's impossible. You can't replicate that and you can't scale it. But I think that's what we're going to see is we're going to see ways where AI can actually watch us play in real time, not just in leadership coaching, like in our lives, and can be so much more attuned to what interventions are needed in the moment. And, of course, we get into, if it can listen to us, that's again, it's scary, but also amazing, right? It's like, well, if an AI can listen to my conversation and give me a recommendation, that's a little scary, but also pretty fucking amazing, right? If it was helpful. So
yeah,
that's where I think it gets closer to us. I think it gets to know us better. And I love what Yuval Harari said a couple of years ago. It's like, that's going to happen. Well, he didn't say that's going to, he was basically saying like, it's happening. And so if it's happening, what do you do as an individual? You got to know yourself better, right? The more the technology knows us, the more we have to know ourselves better. And to me, that's so exciting because I've been the person who's been like, knocking on people's skulls for the last 25 years, trying to get them to self-reflect, trying to get them to like be more internal and to actually look at some of their, the emotional underpinnings of why they believe what they believe. And now I think it's a matter of survival. And, we always say like, well, people don't change unless it's, really, unless it's critical. And I think it's increasingly critical to know yourself and to go on a real journey of authenticity, a real one, not a fake sort of magazine, Instagram version one, a real one. Because if you don't, machines are going to know you better than you know yourself. And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something you said I resonated with so much when you're talking about you're so busy. So I essentially had a business coach for a period of time, and it was honestly, the advice I got was phenomenal. I loved my sessions. I learned so much. It helped me come up with all these different frameworks. Very, very valuable. I think is one of the most valuable things I did. But I always, at the beginning of every meeting, I was swamped. This was during my time when I was starting Self-Pause and scaling it. Essentially, I was so swamped with things to do that every time I got into one of those like 45-minute sessions, I was like, oh man, like here it goes, like 45 minutes. I got to sit down. And I think to your point, a part of that is feeling like I got to like do like the recap of where I'm at, the recap of what I need to do, what I didn't do, the follow-ups, like all the like stuff. So we're on the same page. So he knew where we can move forward.
All the admin. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think what you guys are building right now helps so much. If you have something like in the room with you, it knows the context, right? Forget about the context. You don't have to do. It's just like, now where do we go forward? And I think that's what I got the most value out of. And so if you could just jump straight to that, like, oh my gosh, that'd be so valuable to so many people. I think they'd be able to really benefit from that.
Imagine, Jaden, like, it was like 3 days before your coaching session and your AI, pinged you and said, hey, Jaden, you've got a coaching session with Jonathan coming up soon. Should I send him a summary of everything you've been doing for the last couple of weeks and build a plan for what you guys could work on that I think would be the most impactful coaching? Like first of all, you would say, yes, you'd click that button, right?
Yep.
And then even if it was, right now it would probably be, partially good, right? But if, it will get to, better and better places over time. So you can make the coach so much smarter, and you can reduce like that dread that you feel at the beginning of the coaching session. It's just an artifact, right? It's because we've never had a way to actually create continuity, across where it's like, where it's always happening. It's like if you're a parent, right? Like, when are you not parenting? Like, you're always parenting, right? You may not be standing right in front of your kid in that moment, but you're always parenting, right? It's always on your mind. But, we've created this bizarre environment. I think of this, one of my favorite books that I read back when I used to study psychology a lot was We've had 100 years of psychotherapy and the world's getting worse. And the overall premise of this book, it's a hilarious book, but it's basically like, what are we doing? Right. We have all these societal problems. We have all this chaos. And this was like 30 years ago. He wrote this book. Yeah. They wrote this book. He's like, we do this weird thing. We like take people out of their lives. We stick them in a room with a stranger. We have them sort of like download all of their troubles. And then the person pats them on the back, sends them back into the world. And it's like, good luck. Right. And then, every couple of weeks you come back. I was like, what are we doing? This is nuts. But we sort of took that model, replicated, put it into the business world. And it's like, nobody, I don't mean to be sort of, painting it all with a negative brush. Like, it's, as you said, it's super helpful, but it needs to be so much more in the context of what we're actually doing in our life. And we have that opportunity now.
Yeah, 100%. Something I'd love to ask you about on that is, what is one of the biggest challenges you guys have faced or you're facing or working on? What's the most challenging part about really integrating AI into this process?
So far, it's like we have too many good ideas, right? There are
Okay.
so like we did a workshop with one of our clients, and we introduced kind of the first version, and they loved it, but they were like, could it do this? Could it do that? What if it could do that? Could it do this? Could it do? And the problem is, the answer is yes. Like technically, all of the things that they are wanting it to do, and so are possible, technically possible, today.
Mhm.
I'm not an AI engineer. I'm a use case expert, right? Like I'm on the application front of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the like, what is the, I'm thankful to have an increasingly um, amazing group of advisors in my life who are really helping us focus and say like, okay, what is the problem that we are actually solving? Who is it
Mhm.
for? Like the basic stuff of like developing any new product, so we don't just get a feature dump and all of these things that are theoretically valuable, and then we'll just replicate the same problem of too many ideas. So that to me, I think is our so I would say it's that. And then I think there's the irrational part of the fear around AI and company data, right? The I think it's rational. I think it's reasonable. I think it's a good fear that companies have. They want to protect their data, operational data, data that needs to be secured, right? I understand
Yeah.
that, but there's a bunch of other data that's not that important to secure, or it's not like it's not that it's not important. It's just it's like you don't go to Uber and try to do your tax return, right? Like that's not what you do. It's not what it's
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
right? And so you don't have to worry about like your tax information going into Uber, right? Like, and so I think there's just a little bit of a misplaced anxiety where it's like, people are going to say something to AI. Well, guess what? They could use their personal email address to do that with ChatGPT today. It's like the cat's out of the bag. Like you just deal with it. So I think
Mhm.
there's a place of maturation where we have to be, there are rational, reasonable, important considerations for companies to secure their data. But there are other opportunities where we can solve real problems if we take a more sort of balanced view on what do we allow people to do, and people are doing a lot of these things already.
Yeah, 100%. Jonathan, it has been fantastic having you on the show today. As we wrap this up, the question that I really want to ask you, because of who you are and where you are and what you work on, if there's one piece of advice you feel like you could give to people today, this doesn't even have to be related to AI, but leaders, managers, people working with people, that you've learned from your career and your time working on this. What's one piece of advice you feel like you could give people?
The skill that I learned in law school, which I wish I could teach to everybody, is the ability and the willingness to see an issue from someone else's perspective, and to be curious and to ask questions, especially when you don't agree with someone, when you think that their view is wrong or ill-informed, whatever it is that you think, to assume that there is some reason why they believe what they believe, even if it's different than your own. And if there's one thing that we have to figure out how to solve as a species, is this division where my beliefs become my identity. And there just has to be people who want to be part of a solution. You have to start asking questions. You have to be curious about other people's point of view. Otherwise, we're just going to get more and more entrenched and more separated. And that road only has one outcome.
Crypto is like the financial system, but different. It doesn't care where you come from, what you look like, your credit score, or your outrageous food delivery habits. Crypto is finance for everyone, everywhere, all the time. Visit kraken.com/see what crypto can be to learn more. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Ventures Inc. View PBI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. That's the sound of switching your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling. Harness the best converting checkout and same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Stop leaving sales on the table. Discover why millions trust Shopify to build, grow, and run their business. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech23.
100%. I love that advice. That is fantastic. I think that's so powerful and so useful for people today. Jonathan, it has been amazing having you on the podcast today. If people want to learn, more about essentially what you're doing and what you guys are building right now, what's the best way for them to find out more about your company?
I'm happy to give anybody who's kind of in this space a demo, kind of what we're doing. You can send me an email to Jonathan, JONATHAN @refound.com, and we can set up a screen share and I can show you around and ask you some questions, and you can give your feedback. And then refound.com, REFOUND.com is our website, and you can always pick up a copy of Good Authority, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever. Good Authority: How to Become the Leader Your Team is Waiting For. My first and only book, and I like to think a good one.
I love it. And to the listener, I'll leave a link to Good Authority in the show notes, and also a link to the website as well, so you can check that out, learn more about them. Jonathan, it's been amazing having you on. To the listener, thank you so much for tuning in to the AI Chat podcast. I hope you can rate us wherever you get your podcasts, and have a fantastic